Many, many years ago, there lived one of the greatest yogis the world has ever known. Stories of how she did yoga in the sky and helped countless people spread far and wide. In a land far away, one ambitious student heard of these miracles and set out to find her. After weeks of traveling over mountains and across plains, he finally arrived. But no one was there. Exhausted, he fell into a deep sleep. By the time that he awakened, he had learned these rare techniques. This yogini, Lady Niguma, had taught him in his dreams.
My name is Bob Serino. I am a leader at the Yoga Studies Institute. Over the last 3 months, the Yoga Studies Institute has trained hundreds of students, some for 100 hours, some for 200 hours, in one of the world's most rare, most interesting yogic systems, Lady Niguma. Her original instructions were to only teach one person for 7 generations. And so, her wisdom was passed down over the last 1,000 years, down through the Shangpas, down through Jason Kappa, down through Michael Roach, and now through Connie O'Brien and Earl Burney with the Yoga Studies Institute. The specific knowledge and ancient asana postures of Lady Niguma's systems were nearly lost, though, like almost 30 years ago. We often think about the Kumpo Nyojors and the Master Taranathas, who went through absolutely extraordinary adversity so that we, today, could use these tools to liberate the world from suffering. We think of these icons as historical figures that lived sometime in the past. But as I've seen our students illuminate with joy and love and do their practice, I couldn't help but wonder how specifically we receive these teachings. And that's when I learned that these icons were not some figures left behind in ancient history. They are still with us here today. Michael Roach and John Brady are living icons who demonstrate what it means to live in dedicated labor, working tirelessly to preserve and pass on these irreplaceable teachings. We no longer have to wonder where our modern-day Kumpo Nyojors and Master Taranathas are. They are here with us today on this call. So in their kind generosity, Michael Roach and John Brady have agreed to share, as old friends might, how they rescued the critical Niguma text, the machine of the body, from being forgotten forever. The main text that we use to teach Lady Niguma's system. It's an amazing story, and I asked them to share it with us today, as all of our students have grown very connected to our lineage. This is all made possible because of the Asian Legacy Library. They are the snow on the mountain that nourishes and sustains all of us at the Yoga Studies Institute here in the Valley. Without the library's painstakingly curated body of knowledge, we would all be stumbling with dim hope in benighted darkness. So with no further ado, I would love to invite John Brady and Michael Roach to share a little bit about how they came across this text. I hear it's a pretty interesting story.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. And thank all the YSI students around the world who are actually benefiting from the wonderful training that YSI Yoga Studies Institute is doing for China and Russia and beyond. So welcome. and also ALL, Asian Legacy Library, who tirelessly still are going around the world looking for collections that could uncover other possible things that were considered lost. And we're really happy to share this moment with you. But Geshe Michael was really the instrument to uncover, essentially, in Russia at the Institute of Oriental Studies, original name, in St. Petersburg, back in 1993, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, the insight to go there because of the rare collection was his, motivation to uncover what they had in their library, priceless library. So I kind of remember walking into that world of yours in '96 when you were setting it up. Yeah.
I thought people might like to see some photos that we took in those days and some photos of the library. You guys ready with that first photo? This is what the library looks like in St. Petersburg. This building is called Dvorets, which means the palace of the Tsar, of the King of Russia. And I believe these were the apartments of his son, of the prince.
Peter the Great.
The city was started by Peter the Great, and that's why it was originally called St. Petersburg. But there in that library, there's a lot of history there. And so that palace was cleared out and it was replaced with books. And it holds tens of thousands of books. And there are two large warehouses as part of the palace where the Tibetan books are kept. Tibetan and Sanskrit and ancient Chinese books are kept there. In the next picture, this is the Hermitage Museum.
It's an amazing place.
Which in English we call Hermitage. And it has 3 million pieces of art. And there's a joke in Russia that if you spent a week in each room, you would die before you finished looking at all the... And we were allowed to go there in the back and see the Tibetan art, for example. And there are about 200 statues of Tara, for example.
Beautiful Tanka.
And all kinds of incredible treasures there. It's one of the greatest museums in the world. That and the Louvre are the two greatest museums in the world. This is the back of the palace and the back of the Hermitage. This is part of the complex. And this is a courtyard. And this is very important historically for Russia and also for China, because this is where socialism started. And it's in this courtyard that a boat was grabbed by the revolutionaries under Lenin, and they brought it down the river in front of where the library is, and they started bombing from the boat that they stole. They started bombing the palace of the king, and this is how socialism started. And the reason why Russia is so prosperous today and China is so prosperous today, they have a different system than we have in America, but it's working very well for them. And this started right where we found the yoga book. So it's a very exciting story that all that started within 100 meters of where we found this ancient yoga book. This is an interesting building. This is called Почтамт. You can see it in Russian at the top. And this is where we gave our first lectures. The DCI first programs were held at the Почтамт, which is just behind, it's in the area behind the library. And this is where Lenin started the revolution. And standing in the Почтамт, it's called the post office of Old Petersburg. And I think this picture has been doctored, it looks to me. But this is actually, you can see the buildings. That's the library buildings in the background. And this is where the Russian Revolution started in 1917. This is where socialism started. And the success of Russia and China that you see today, it's really started here, right next to where we found the yoga books. and right next to that great library. So I think it's kind of exciting that we gave our first programs right there in the same room where Lenin was giving his first lectures. This picture is from about 1997 or something, and in the picture, so we had we chose three young Tibetans. Ngawang Ketsin is on the left, and Ngawang Jampa Numdrol is on the right. And these two young men, they were young at the time. Now they're pretty old. But we went to the library and we had negotiations with the library. You know, we had very, very intense negotiations with the director of the library, which is Dr. Yuri Petrosyan, who was from, I think, Georgia, I'm not sure, or the same part of Russia as Gorbachev at the time. And I believe, and we had a wonderful time, you know. And I remember one day we were in the car, and I was talking with these guys, and they said, "Well, how do you like Russia?" You know, and I said, "Well, I love it, and I'm getting to make so many friends in the library, and we became close friends, you know." And they said, "Well, what was your impression of Russia before you came here?" And I said, "Well, I'll be honest. When I was a kid, they used to tell us that the Russians don't like us, and they're gonna bomb us. We used to practice getting under the desk. Did you guys?"
Yeah, we did it. Yeah.
And they
bomb
said,
raid.
Yeah, they said the Russians are gonna bomb us, and they were laughing in the car, and they said, "That's so funny, you know." And I said, "Why are you guys laughing?" They said, "Our teachers told us the same thing about you, you know." And then I said, "Wow, you know, you actually come here and you see the great work that Russians have done for centuries. That library is 300-400 years old. And those books were collected for hundreds of years by the Russian kings and from different parts of China, Tibet, Mongolia. And it's incredible, you know. And we just became really close to each other. And it was kind of exciting. I'd like to show you guys the next slide. So we were there for 14 years, John?
Yeah, we started in 93, actually longer, about 17 years.
We were there for 17 years. Our team was in the library for 17 years. ALL paid for everything. ALL paid a large fee to the library. We paid all the salaries. We paid all the apartments. We paid all the food for everybody. We paid for the vodka parties.
Yes, vodka parties. I remember.
Pretty wild. And not us, but, you know. So data started to come in from all these three young men typing all day. And they had great help from the library. And I'd like to mention a few of the staff members there. There was Professor Yevgeny Kuchinov, was the director following Dr. Petrosyan. And then especially we had a great, unbelievable great man who's very old at the time. His name is Lev Serafimovich Savitsky. And he was in charge of the Tibetan books and the Chinese ancient books.
What a special guy.
Yeah, did you meet his old guy?
Yeah, I love the guy. He was like so kind to our people who were working. And of course, you know, we used to toast a lot with Mr. Professor Savitsky, and amazing man, brilliant man.
He was a chain-smoking guy. He wasn't allowed
in the library.
No, he wasn't allowed to smoke in the library. He had to go out the stairway.
Out in front of the door. Yeah.
And he would go out there. And he was a naval officer.
Amazing.
And a KGB officer. And he had been in his lifetime. And he told us beautiful stories. I don't know if you guys know, but the German army, the Nazis surrounded Leningrad, it was called in those days. And they surrounded it, I don't know, for almost 3 years, I think, 1,000 days. and no food got in except for some run across the ice, and people were eating their shoes, and Russians refused to surrender, and I think 1 million people died in the city, and the Nazis started bombing the city with artillery. They didn't want to destroy it because they wanted to take it, but they fought inch by inch into the city, and the library, Savitsky would take me outside and say, "Look at that hole in the wall." I say, "Oh my God, what's that?" He said, "That's where the shells came down, in the library." And I'm like, "Well, why didn't you guys fix it?" He says, "We want to remember, how we saved the library." And I said, "Well, what do you mean you saved the library?" He said, "We slept on the floor here in the library. And every time a bomb came down and started on fire, the Tibetan books and the ancient Chinese books, we put the fire out with our hands, and we saved the books here, and he says, we don't want to forget, we leave the holes in the wall." And it was cold with the holes in the wall. But he was a great man.
Yeah. I had such great memories of him, and the beauty of his love for the collection, was just extraordinary.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know if you guys know, but the sixth Dalai Lama, he wrote a lot of love poems, like kind of high secret songs, and Dr. Savitsky translated them. Out of all the books in ancient Asia, he thought those were the most beautiful, and he translated them into Russian, and so they were very, very beautiful. Also, we had Dr. Rezvan was helping with the computer work, Dr. Tikhanova, and without those guys, we wouldn't have happened. Yeah, we wouldn't have done the work. So let's go back to some more pictures. I like this because nobody ever asked me about all this. But yeah, so we got, over 17 years, they cataloged 141,000 books, 141,000 ancient woodblock manuscripts. And we had trouble even processing it. We had trouble even knowing what was there, because you have to read 141,000 things. And I was partly entering a retreat. John was trying to keep up with everything. And one day we came across this entry. Okay, so I'd like to read it to you guys. It says, "Gya karna gyaser kasmira pel p horke yike misspelled dang beri namdang mawashukso." What that says is, this is a record of things from different countries that you cannot show in words. You must have beri. Beri means illustrations. It's a book of illustrations. So it was, most of the ancient books are philosophy. But this author, whose name is Changlung, can you keep it up? Changlung Pandita, he said, let's have a book of things that you can't describe in words. Let's have a book of illustrations. And the title is so funny. It says, I'm going to give you illustrations from different countries of Asia, including how they write their alphabets. So the book includes the alphabets of many countries. So here they are. Gyakar means the big country where people wear white clothes, which Tim is? Gyakar is India. Okay, so Gyakar means big country where they wear white clothes, and that's India. Now, what's Gyanat? Big country where they like black pajamas, and that's China. Okay, the next one is Gyaser, $100 if you guys can guess who is the big golden country. Who said? Wait. Russia. Yay, she got it, because they have yellow hair. So it's called the big yellow country. So you got the big black country, the big white country, and the big yellow country. He's got Russian alphabets in there, illustrating alphabets from Russia, okay? And then guess what Kashmira is? Kashmir, which is where actually a lot of Buddhism Sangha studied there. And by the way, the disciple Thomas was there. Then you've got Pe, which is Tibet, and Hor, which means Mongolia. So this strange guy, 300-400 years ago, he said, let's carve a wood block, not with philosophy, but let's show pictures, and it's called Piri. And we were fascinated by the entry. So we said, we wrote to the workers, and we said, send us a couple pages. Okay, here they are. There you go, wow. They were like, wow, what's that stuff? And they have captions, and what you see above is, and by the way, in those days, we had no way of scanning a whole page. So we would scan half a page,
half and half.
And we tape it together, and then the tape would go. But in Tibet and China, in ancient times, they had surgery, and they had very advanced surgery. Then one day, a doctor operated on a daughter of the king of Tibet, and she died. And they banned surgery forever. But they recorded what the surgical instruments were. So what you see here is some of the surgical instruments from ancient Tibet. Okay. Now down below, you see Niguma and her partner Naropa's yoga poses, and each one has a written description of how to do the yoga poses. And here's a close-up on some other poses, and this was very helpful. Obviously, this became one of the most important sources for reconstructing Niguma's yoga, and that's how we found it in the library. By the way, I checked yesterday; they have 17 copies there.
That's amazing.
Okay. Now, these books were collected for hundreds and hundreds of years, especially from Mongolia, Siberia, which Russia stretches all the way to Asia, right? So sometimes we forget that Russia is 50% Asia, and they have a heavy Mongolian influence, heavy Siberian influence, and you can see here, this book was written by somebody named Changlung Pandita. He lived about 300 years ago, and his teacher was Jangya Rinpoche Dorje, who's a great Vajrayogini practitioner and a great teacher in Beijing. He taught in Beijing for a long time. He taught the Emperor of China. And so it's a very, very interesting connection between Russia and yoga and China, and we got socialism going on in the background, to the two great socialist countries of the world, and it's kind of amazing. Okay.
How did the Roriks?
We're gonna get
to
the Roriks.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought that Russia has a glorious history of Tibetan studies, Tibetan language studies, Sanskrit, Chinese, ancient Chinese, and I it's a personal favorite topic of mine. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna introduce you some of these old Russian dudes. Okay, here's Vasily Pavlovich Vasilyev. Yeah, this guy. Okay, Otto von Butlink. Okay, and this famous dictionary. Christina knows this dictionary. This is the dictionary used by all Sanskrit students in the West. This is Sir Monier Williams. And it's we actually typed it in. It's like 80,000 pages of entries in typing, and we input it. And he was made a knight, Sir Monier Williams, by the Queen of England for doing this work. What people don't know is that he took it from the Russians. And Butlink, who's in the picture here, I don't know how many decades before this guy lived, he did a 7-volume dictionary. I believe it's Russian-German. And he was a German descent, but he was a Russian. And so really, these great Russia, how did the books get to Russia?
Yeah, that's
And there was this extraordinary school of Oriental studies, and they studied Tibetan, they studied Mongolian, they studied Chinese, and they were on Sanskrit, great Sanskrit scholars. Let's go to the next dude. Okay. This is Ivan Pavlovich Minayev, 1840, 1890. Okay, how many people here enjoy Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life? He found the Sanskrit and he edited it, like in 1870. And I think he's a really cool dude, So his name is Minayev, and he's one of the grandfathers of Russian Tibetan studies, Sanskrit studies, Chinese studies, and I just think he's awesome. All right, thanks for finding the Bodhicharma.
I guess, Michael, there is a Sanskrit collection on the second floor of the library.
They have a great collection. They also have, we're gonna see a great ancient Chinese Buddhist collection from Denhuang caves, from the desert, the Gobi desert, the caves in Gobi. Let's go to the next picture. This is somebody named Sergei Oldenburg. He's on the left, his brother's on the right. And he started a thing called Bibliotheca Buddhica, which is the Library of Buddhism. And he started printing ancient books. It's like ALL. This is probably John Brady's previous life.
He's got so much more hair.
On the left. Yeah, probably it's not John. But the guy on the left started publishing ancient books, just like we have the publisher here of the Diamond Cutter Press. Hi, Ellie. And just the way they published, this is the Diamond Cutter commentary that John Brady's project also recovered in Russia. Okay, the first copy was brought out of St. Petersburg. And and it was translated by our Mixed Nuts crew. And that's okay. You want to say hi? You can say hi.
I don't know what Tim's trying to do.
I think Tim wants you to say hi in the phone. But oh, that's okay. Okay, so anyway, these books were started in Russia by Oldenburg. Okay, and that's how we got them. All right. Okay, next picture. I love this guy, Fyodor Ippolitovich Shchebatsky. Fyodor Ippolitovich Shchebatsky.
You really want him on your team.
Yeah. He's 1880s, right? 1866 to 1942. This guy is special, okay? He was, these are all lineage, they're all students of Minayev and those guys. And they all lived in St. Petersburg or studied in St. Petersburg or taught in St. Petersburg. And this is how the books got there. By the way, the second greatest collection in Russia is also in St. Petersburg, across the river. You have to walk across the bridge. You can walk from the National Library. You can walk across to the library of St. Petersburg University. And John Brady's team went there and negotiated permission to catalog that library. And that only took 3-4 years, because that was 3,000 books.
3,000 volumes.
But those volumes were collected by these guys. And these guys knew what they were doing. And that's the most concentrated collection of great classics that you'll ever find, is in the University of St. Petersburg across the river. And John finished that. For dessert, they finished that library. And,
I never got to St. Petersburg in the summer. It was always in January.
Yeah. I don't know how that worked out.
I don't know how it worked out.
But we always got there in the winter.
It's like the worst part of the year.
I remember the Tibetan boys were dying of cold.
Yeah.
And I actually took my jacket off and gave it to one of them. And I walked around St. Petersburg without a jacket on. Because he was so cold, because they grew up in a hot climate and they were suffering. I'd like to mention some of the staff at the university. Yes. Dr. Natalia Shishina was the chief director of the library, who was very gracious to us and helped us do everything. Dr. Shukovskaya was in charge of all the Oriental books. Badman Narmayev, who was Kalmyk or Buryat, Mongolian, who helped us with the Tibetan books, and Mrs. Tamara Petrova, who was also a very great sister. We had another person, Dr. Elena Kharkova, who helped us with everything, finding apartments, getting everything together there, and that was all her doing. She was a doctorate student from the university, and she did everything. She got everything going. Okay, let's buzz through these other guys. We don't have that much time. Here's an interesting story. What is this place, John?
Oh, it's our home base in Howell, New Jersey. It's the Ken Rinpoche's main temple in New Jersey, and I'm thinking about all the incredible memories I have of being in that temple.
Yeah, this is a strange Mongolian temple, less than an hour from Princeton University and in New York. And that's where John and I studied. That's where we studied with our teacher, Ken Rinpoche, Geshe Losang Taichen. And that was an old Mongolian monastery. And there were about 20 old Mongolian monks. The youngest was 75. And I'm going to show you one of them, okay? His name is Geshe Ngawang Yampel. He's wearing glasses because he was stubborn, because he was completely blind. And he used to read the books with his hands, okay? I figured it out, I don't know. In the dark, he would be sitting there going like this on the books. And I asked him, he's from Kalmykia, which is the Black Sea of Russia. And I said, well, how did you become a high geshe, Tharmpa geshe, at Jebu Monastery in Lhasa? I said, well, how did you do that? He said, it was easy. I got on a horse, I rode it to Petersburg, and then I got on the Trans-Siberian Railroad. I went out to Vladivostok on the Pacific Ocean, and I just got on a camel and walked across the Gobi Desert, and I got to Tibet, and I became a geshe. I studied in Tibet, and I became a high geshe. And then he became blind, and he ended up in that Mongolian temple in New Jersey. And he used to say, the strangest thing happened when I hit St. Petersburg. What? I went to see the library, and there was this weirdo guy there named Shabatsky, this intense dude. And he tried to debate with me, and he was pretty good, And anyway, Shabatsky wrote a 2-volume work on Dharmakirti and Buddhist logic, which is still a great source, still used by many people. And the Russians were amazing. Let's go to the next guy. Yevgeny Yevgenyevich Obermiller. Yevgeny Yevgenyevich Obermiller. Okay, died young, died at 35. But he was a master of Asanga's works. He studied the Abhisankara. He would have studied the Lion's Dance in depth. He did the first translations of it, and before the age of 35. And lived in St. Petersburg. And again, one of the great, this lineage of the Russian scholars is extraordinary. It's very similar to the mixed nuts. Next guy, Andrei Ivanovich Vostrikov. Andrei Ivanovich Vostrikov also died young, 33, but in his time had time to translate some of the greatest history books of Tibet. And his work is very famous. It's called The History of Tibetan Literature. And it's a standard book. We all use it before the age of 33. So he was at the library. He was working at the library in the 1920s and 30s and did extraordinary work. The Russian Revolution immediately opened up great scholarship, great art, great music, ballet, everything. The original revolution was quite exciting. Okay, next, Nikolai Rerich.
There he is.
A great artist, a very, very famous artist. And he ended up in Tibet and traveled throughout Tibet and brought many great books back. Next picture. This is one of his this is one of my favorite paintings of his.
Beautiful
It's
painting.
called The Healer, collecting medicinal herbs in the Himalayan mountains. And he actually did that. He actually walked around the Himalayas, and he mastered many of the healing arts and taught them in Russia afterwards. Okay, next picture.
Whole museum in New York.
Yeah, you've been there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
They have a large museum. Well, not large, but it's in a large residence.
4-story.
Yeah, awesome museum, and that's his peace sign that he invented. And this New York, huge apartment has 150 of his most important paintings. Why I'm mentioning that is they also have a few manuscripts that are extremely valuable. For example, the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life in the original Russian translation. Very, very valuable. So when I was studying Russian at Princeton, I went to the administration and I said, I'm going to design my own course for myself. Can I get credit for it? They said, yeah, you can. I said, okay, so I'm going to go to the Hermitage Museum. I'm going to study the Bodhisattva Charyavatara in Russian. And then I'm going to put it into my thesis, my graduate thesis. So they said, okay, you can have credit for that. And I went there and I said, well, I'll just take it out and copy it. They said, no. I said, well,
Sit there and read it.
there's no cell phones in those days. They said, you can sit here and read it. And we got to be very close, and we became very close friends with his wife or his partner who had traveled with him to Tibet. And she was ancient by that time. Okay, here's some pictures of the museum. And very beautiful photographs. And last thing, okay, Tim, this is his son, Yuri Rerich, okay, whose name got changed to George, Yuri, and he translated the Blue Annals, thousands of pages. He lived mostly in the Himalayas. His father had him and then he lived most of his life in the Himalayas. And a great scholar of Tibetan and ancient Sanskrit. He's the first translation of the most important history book of all of Asia, probably. And we use it every day. It's extremely valuable. So really, these books about Niguma yoga have come from a very ancient and unbelievable Russian tradition. Here's the next picture. This is the Denhuang caves near the Gobi desert. And, we knew that there were paintings there and we knew that there were statues there, but they found a wall at the back of a cave that was suspiciously flat. And they chipped away at it and they broke through and they found full of books. It was full of books. And we've talked to the Denhuang officials in China. Here's the next picture. I went there with this nice lady I know. This is Veronica my wife, standing in front of the cave where they found the library, and they built this library later. They built it outside of the cave. And that's where they found the Diamond Cutter Sutra, the oldest printed book in the world, comes from this cave. And the Denhuang officials in China, they're very anxious to have us input the books. They're waiting. I had negotiations, they're all ready. And we just need the money. Okay, we just need the money to go in and they are very happy that ALL, and there's officials in North India and Afghanistan, they're also very excited that we could go in and save their books for them for free. And we just need oil on the wheels. Because John and me are still young. We're doing Niguma yoga. We want to save more books.
And we're ready to launch a couple of new projects in the next year.
Yeah,
It's
that
time.
rocket just needs fuel.
The Mongolian collection as well as a very
we got
collection.
300,000 books waiting for us. They are calling. We wake up at night. They are calling us. But we need support. We really do need support. Yeah.
Wow. It's wonderful everybody out there is trying to give that oil on the wheels to support us. Thank you.
All right, so the first question is how did you translate the yoga poses from those pechas? And were they words and pictures? How did the sequence come together from that? And how did you make that into that presentation for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yoga is more difficult to translate than Madhyamika. I don't know if you could, Christina could maybe appreciate it, but they'll say, turn your left ankle to the radius and then insert your right, flavicle, and then, bend your right shoulder back and try to get your wrist under your, and then it's all like obscure words for parts of your body that nobody uses for a couple hundred years. And to be honest, it's extremely difficult to translate yoga. So one thing you can do is you can try to get a few different manuscripts and then compare them. And the manuscript by Changlung Pandita that you saw was priceless because you have an illustration. So you don't have to guess of which knee he's talking about, or you have the illustration. So that was why it was so important for John's people to find those wood carvings, because then we know how to recreate the poses. So we used there's a very important book from the late 1300s by Bhutan Rinpoche, who put together the Kagyu and the Tengyu. Taranatha wrote some books. And it's a very difficult thing. And then we actually I studied with some of the living masters who still know about Naropa's yoga and Niguma's yoga. So I spent, a year working with some of those lamas who still knew about the poses. So you need human teacher, you need different books, and it's extremely useful to have the drawings. And without ALL, you can't do it. It's impossible. And the series is awesome. I do it. I don't know. I was looking at my picture from 20 years ago, JB. I feel better now, actually. So I don't know. I think it works pretty well.
It's totally the science. It's a science. Yeah. It's a total science.
Yeah, I was looking at that guy. He looks kind of grumpy and tired, and from 1998 in the Russia picture.
So the next question is:
yay!
It seems like you had a lot of really good fortune to find some really cool texts. What was in some cases it seems like a lot of luck. What do you think, and what was your methodology to be able to get into these libraries or be able to find these texts? They seem to just appear when they're needed.
I came into the equation for Russia collection 1998. Yeah. And when Geshe Michael did his 3-year retreat, I was going there twice a year and supporting, attempting to support the collection. And we did. We took care of the overhead. But it was an interesting day. I was in the collection all day with our two wonderful Tibetan catalogers and Dr. Savitsky. And he said, you should look at the medical collection. And they had it categorized by shelving. And I don't read Tibetan. I'm not a Tibetan scholar. I am a practitioner of Tibetan systems of Buddhism. But it was just, we could say coincidental, right? I pulled a stack out, which is a volume, And within the medical collections of titles, I just opened up, and there was this turning of the wheel, Tulkor text of the images of these yoga asanas. And that was really when I full-heartedly went into the yoga practice in my life. And I was just astounded that this was in existence, and we had permission to scan it. And that's how it happened. And it does happen this way. Sometimes where it happened in Mongolia recently when I was there 2 years ago, where we found a beautifully rare Tibetan medical, pictorialized herbal explanation of various herbs used in the Tibetan medicine system, which they didn't know they had. It was, in a pile of second floor stacks. And this happens sometimes.
I think this motivation to share it with the world
is probably the causes.
I think that's the karma. And I have to say that so far, the work that John's done for 34 years or something, normally ALL will pay all of the expenses. So, we paid the Russian salaries, we paid the Tibetan salaries, we paid everybody's salary, we paid all the computer costs, we paid for heating the building, we paid for everybody's apartment. And
cafe money in Russia.
Yeah, well, vodka cafe. And, but what I'm saying is, if you have this motivation, right, John?
Yes.
Of sharing it for free, which is what ALL does. They share everything for free. And I would estimate $10 million spent so far. And they just share everything for free. When you share everything for free, books come to you because they want to be shared.
The next question is, I'm 70 years old and I'd like to start a yoga practice. How do you recommend that I get that started?
Honey.
Oh, thank you for the question. That's wonderful. So it depends on your capacity to move your body at this point in time. So if you're able to move comfortably, you might be able to do the Lady Niguma practice, which was built beautifully for people who are business people. So they're not really able to have a lot of physical activity in their lives. But if that's too much, there are, there's chair yoga. Oh, geez,
and chair yoga is fine.
Yeah,
chair yoga is
fine.
But we even have a Lady Niguma's chair yoga practice. A chair yoga practice for Lady Niguma. So there are many, many opportunities. John is 73 and he does yoga every day, and its practice is beautiful. It's something that just once you start to build. I know many people who have a practice, and it doesn't matter what age you are.
I gotta tell a story. So right now, as we're holding this program, my mom is driving from San Diego to here to see me. She's 95. And recently, my stepmother, and I went to visit her in San Diego, and she said, honey, I gotta go. I said, I just got here. She said, well, I have to go out, and I said, well, what's more important than your son? And she said, well, I gotta go to my yoga class. I'm like, Mom, I didn't know you're doing yoga. She said, I've been doing yoga for 20 years every day. I'm like, you never told me. How did you start yoga? You taught me Niguma 20 years ago. You did it here in the living room. Did you forget? And she's been doing it for 20 years, and she's 95. She just retired from her business, and she made last year. Okay, ready? She's 95. She made $400,000 last year in her business because she's so
amazing
fit. So yeah, 70. That's nothing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.
Good luck, you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, translate.